I'm John Beaudin. It was a pleasure to finally talk to Jeff Skunk Baxter. And on this one, we present the entire interview on Rock History Book. How many guys can say they've been in Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers? Well, Michael McDonald had his hand with both, of course. Jeff Skunk Baxter is a world-renowned guitarist, left music to work with the U.S. Defense Department in the government agency, but has a brand new album called Speed of Heat. Here's our entire interview with Jeff Skunk Baxter. Hello. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you, Tom.
Hold on, let me make sure. What's the significance of those numbers on your tag for your name? Is there a significant, or is that just phone numbers?
No, I think it's an ID number. I do a lot of business Zoom stuff, so I guess it's an ID.
Ryan just told me about your time constraints, so we'll keep you on time. By the way, I know you've said it already. Fantastic record. By the way, the sequence of a record is very important to me, and of course, you start with "Ladies from Hell." Like, it's just kick-ass. Get the hell out of my way. Tell me about that song.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And a lot of the goodness of the project has to do with my friend and musical colleague, C.J. Vanston. We co-produced it together. He's a great composer and great musician, keyboard player, and great craftsman. So a lot of it had to do with our collaboration on working with this thing together. But "Ladies from Hell" is a term that was given to the British Scottish regiments in World War I. The Germans, when they saw these crazed maniacs, pipes screaming, kilts flashing, coming over the hill, they called them the Ladies from Hell. So the composition is kind of a musical history of Scotland from the Roman times to now. I mean, when you hear the beginning, the sound that you hear is the sound of the moors in northwest Scotland, up in Islay. And the music and what we do is kind of a different sampling and combinations of Celtic music. And then we end up with the Black Watch going out over the hill, and then you can hear the moors again, and then we're back to where we started. But I just wanted to try to do something different, and my heritage is Scottish, so I thought I'd try to do something that reflected that. I'm glad you liked it.
When I first heard it, I went, I just put it on. I'm doing research. I went, what? Whoa, I like this. I didn't expect that, but hey, power to you, man.
Well, when the first war drum hits, it's a good one,
Yeah. When you reinvented "My Old School," which of course you originally played on, I like to tell the singing story, because the fact that Steven Tyler was supposed to do that, share that with us.
Well, I mean, supposed to do it, I guess.
Well, you asked him.
I had asked him, yes, a friend, and I sent him the track, and I put a scratch vocal on it because I wanted him to hear sort of what I was trying to do. And when I sent it to him, he said, "Who's singing?" And I said, "Well, that's me, but I just did that as a scratch vocal so that you kind of knew where it was going." He said, "Well, why don't you sing it?" He goes, "Because I'm not a singer." And he said, "Well, yeah, you are." I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yeah, you are. Why don't you sing it?" And I thought, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, take the shot." So I figured he knows a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I said, "Okay, all right." Because I used to sing it live when we toured in Steely Dan. So I kind of had an affinity for it. I had some DNA for it anyway. And the whole live performance of that song became more and more energetic as we performed it. And I just thought, maybe an injection of super high energy might just be what that song needs.
Do you remember recording? Do you remember recording that originally?
The original or the one that we just did?
Are you one of those guys? Well, the original one. Are you one of those guys like, we hear about football players and hockey players? They'll talk about. I've interviewed a lot of them. I'm Canadian. They'll describe a move. Oh, then he passed it to me, and I'm going, I can't remember what I did yesterday. Are you? To me, I know your past very well. You seem like one of those guys that has an encyclopedic mind. But do you remember, like for instance, going in and recording that song originally?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that afternoon, I worked at a place called Valley Sound, repairing and building guitars. And that afternoon, I had just finished cutting out a Stratocaster from a beautiful piece of bird's eye maple. And I was out in the parking lot routing it out so I could put the electronics in. And I put the electronics in, assembled the instruments, strung it up, took it with me to the session, and that's what I used for that performance.
That's crazy. Do It Again, another reinventing. I didn't recognize it, which is what you want. I think that's the whole point, right? When I first heard it, go ahead.
Well, partially the whole point. In other words, why would I want to do something again? Why would I want to do it again the same way? And again, CJ, when we started to approach this, came up with the idea of doing it in 6/8 as a shuffle, because we had a discussion. Our favorite kinds of music to play is shuffle. That's just the most satisfying, human satisfying, most neurotransmitter secretion right stuff for human beings. So that's how we approached it. And we wanted to do something, again, very different. I don't want to do the same thing. Like my old school is just different.
Yeah. With Do It Again, can you share any anecdotes on that, the original?
On the original?
Yeah.
Well, it was ostensibly the first single from Steely Dan, but it actually wasn't. The first single released by Steely Dan was a song called Dallas, sung by Jimmy Hodder, the drummer, a great singer, great drummer. And it started to get airplay. And Mr. Becker and Mr. Fagan were afraid that between the way the song, the genre of the song, plus the name Steely Dan, people would think it was a country band. So they pulled the single. But Do It Again was very interesting to me because it's one of those songs where I think timing is everything. If we had released that a year before or a year after, it was like minute by minute. If we'd released that song a year before or a year after, nobody would have cared. So I'm not quite sure. I guess it's all about the stars aligning in whatever way they do to permit the entrance of something new into the universe,
My Place in the Sun.
And that portal would have closed.
Yeah. My Place in the Sun with Michael McDonald. Everyone loves reunions and everyone loves it it's a common thing in families. I mean, people want people to get along, but that's a perfect world. Have you kept in contact with Michael all these years?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've done a couple of charity gigs together up in Santa Barbara. And of course we were in touch because he came in and did an incredible job on this project. The criterion was, it was going to be an instrumental record. All I want to do is record Apache, because that's one of my favorite songs, and have some fun. And when I mentioned to Michael that I was doing a solo project, he said, well, if you'd like me to do something on it, I'd love to. I said, well, okay, let me give that some thought. So as the different artists sort of stepped up, Clint Black and Johnny Lang, Rick Livingston, we had two rules, myself and CJ. One was, if you're gonna join us, we need to co-write, the three of us, so that there was something a germ of an idea. And number two, it had to be something that you've never done before. No. And this track with Michael is something that Michael has never done, very different for him. The new single, Bad Move with Clint Black, unless you know Clint's voice, you wouldn't know that's a Clint Black record.
Well, Lisa didn't recognize him, right?
I'm sorry?
Lisa didn't recognize him singing.
Well,
right?
it turns out that she was joking. She's an incredible actress, and I actually, said, yeah, okay. But I think what she meant by that was that it was such a radical departure from anything that he'd ever done. And I really meant what I said, that, your husband is an incredible musician. I mean, country is just one facet of what this man is capable of. And Johnny Lang, the same thing, very different tune. That I Can Do Without starts out as a kind of a, funky kind of grooving thing. And then it landslides into this hardcore rock piece. Again, something he's never done before, but he did that. He did an incredible job.
How did you coexist, for instance, when you were in the Doobies with Pat? How do you coexist? I mean, ask Caleb Quay, and I know you did that stint with Elton, well, the live I'm talking about, the big one. But how do you coexist with another guitarist, with Walter and Steely? I mean, how does that with Denny? How do you approach that as a guitarist?
Well, I guess my perspective has always been one of this as a studio musician. And if you want to be a successful studio musician, you have to learn to listen. And you also, there is an etiquette amongst players that develops where you give space to other players. It's always interesting when sometimes you go in and, young players or folks that have never had much experience in the studio, all they do is they just want to play and play and play and play more and more and more and more. And you sort of sit back and you go, okay, that's what you want to do. Sooner or later, you'll wear yourself out, and then we'll get down to business. So to me, it's a question of etiquette and a question of understanding that everyone has something to offer and finding the best way to pull all that together, to assemble that in a way where everybody can interact in a way that produces the best product.
One of the best tracks on the album for me that I really like, Insecurity, with the Rick Livingston. Before you answer the question about that,
Canadian, by the way, he was the lead singer for Agent, and I produced one of those records, and that's where I met him. A phenomenal singer.
But whatever happened to the supergroup? With those some fine lads you were with, the best.
Oh, you mean the best?
Yeah.
We just did it for the hell of it. I mean,
that's
sometimes
like that could have been the greatest band in the world, man.
Well, maybe some things are not meant to be. Maybe some things are best left to have their, as Michael would say, place in the sun. And we really didn't do it with the idea of continuing. It was just a kind of a one-off, have some fun. Worked out pretty well. But.
Yeah. Well, tell me about Insecurity.
That's a song that was written by a gentleman named Tim Torrance, who was a guitar player in another band that I produced called Sneaker. And we'd always stayed in touch. And he had given me that song a long time ago, given it to me, meaning here's, sort of some songs that I've written. And we took it, rearranged it, added a little, a C section to it, and turned it into this kind of funk tune. And when we listen to it now, my first thought was, gee, I wonder if this is dated. But I listened to the track, and especially Rick's singing, and actually some of my playing on it, I said, no, we're going to do this. And we did it live last night, was the first show we'd done, and the response was tremendous.
Is that a
So I
fun
think
song to
people-
play? Sorry to interrupt you. Is it, to me,
Oh,
my first thought was, oh my God, this would be so fun to play.
Well, a lot of what I did when I was a kid playing in R&B bands, I love that stuff. The whole funk groove to me is, I want to be in the pocket. I mean, you can shred. It's fun to, play a million hemi, semi, demi quavers and impress everybody with your trampoline skills. But for me, the total joy in life is to find the groove and get in the pocket and just, ride that train.
Why'd you leave the Doobie Brothers? Why'd you leave Steely Dan?
Well, I left Steely Dan because Mr. Becker and Mr. Fagan had decided they didn't want to tour anymore. And I really enjoyed playing live. It's it's a dichotomy, being a session rat and being a live performer. And I was actually on tour with the Doobies in the band. But at the time, I was playing with 3 different bands: Steely Dan, Doobie Brothers, and Linda Ronstadt, playing pedal steel. So I was at the Nebworth Music Festival with the Doobies, and when I hung up the phone, I said, "Well, that's kind of it for me and Steely Dan." They said, "Well, now you're in the Doobie Brothers." Okay, Roger that.
Well, you'd played on 2 previous albums anyway before you officially became a member, so.
That's true. As a studio musician, again, my job was to come in and add whatever it is that they needed, do what I can, playing pedal steel, playing acoustic guitar, playing, whatever was needed. That's my job.
Were you ever going to be on One Step Closer with the Doobies?
I'm sorry?
Were you ever going to be on One Step Closer with the Doobie Brothers? Did you work on that?
The album?
Yeah, were you ever going to be on that? Or were you at all?
No, I had already left by then. I think that was something they did after I had left.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if didn't look at, usually I look at the liner notes before I meet someone, before I talk to someone. And why did you leave the Doobies? Like what?
Well, kind of the same thing. It gets to a point as a change agent, which I think I am, you have to know when it's time to go and do something else. And after I brought Michael McDonald into the band and radically changed the band, kind of like what happened with Fleetwood Mac, there comes a time when, from a creative standpoint, it's time. You just got to know. And so I was also starting to really get into producing records. And it's hard to produce something when you're out on the road. I did it once and it was very difficult. I mean, listening to, finding a Best Buy that I could go into and find a turntable that I could, listen to the test pressings. Yeah, okay, I think this is right. While people are trying to buy, blenders and refrigerators. It just, you only have so many hours in a day.
What was the reaction? There it is right there, taking it to the streets. What was the reaction with the band? That's such a different animal. It's strange. When I bought that album, I noticed a big difference, but then again, I didn't. I kept going, it's the Doobie Brothers still. What was that I would have thought that was a hard sell, but that was a successful album.
Which album was that?
Taking It to the Streets.
Oh, well, it was compelling. I mean, Michael's songwriting, excellent. And his R&B background, something that, again, I have a strong R&B background. It's basically the song itself is a gospel tune. I mean, as a musicologist, that's what that is. And gospel is inescapable in its ability to reach out and envelop you in a joyous embrace, I guess would be the word. It's pretty compelling.
You end the album with the Speed of Heat. You started Kick-Ass, you ended Kick-Ass. Tell me about that tune.
Well, I'm glad you like Ladies from Hell. That was a fun tune. Again, that's an ode to my Scottish heritage. It's a musical journey through the history of Scotland. We start on the moors, and then we end up with the Black Watch, and we end on the moors. So Ladies from Hell was a name given to the Scottish military members of the British Army during World War One, when the Germans saw these guys dressed in kilts with pipes blaring coming over the top, and they went, those are Ladies from Hell. And so that got the name, or that's where I got the name from. It's not meant to be any kind of a put down or detrimental. And yeah, I thought it would be fun to end up the album instead of, sort of trailing off into a ballad or something like that. Hey folks, so we want to leave people a little bit breathless.
Job well done. Why did Elliot Randall do the solo and Reeling in the Years? It was that like the beginning or a germ of Walter and Donald just having this vision of what the song, how did that happen?
Well, Elliot was a friend of mine. I mean, we'd played together when we were kids, meaning, when we were teenagers. So it just made sense. I mean, I have no problem. Again, I'm a studio guy, right guy for the job. And I thought he did an incredible job. There were other songs that Denny played on, which was killer. And then there were songs that was right for me. So again, I just look at it as from a professional music standpoint. It was the right guy for the job.
So ego hasn't gotten in your way of getting done what you needed to get done, it sounds like, because I hear ego, even though people don't say that word when I talk to them. I mean, I'm 62. I've interviewed a lot of people I love, but why isn't that part of your software?
Well, we all have an ego, and I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like it got in your way of getting to do what you had to do, though.
Well, I think maybe it was my upbringing. My father had taught me that the most important thing is doing a great job, and nothing should stand in the way. And we're all human, of course. And I'm not, the perfect, egoless person sailing through the world. And one of the things my dad did teach me was how to channel energy. I mean, he wasn't a guru. He was senior vice president of the world's largest advertising agency. But the idea being that to be creative, there are things that will waste your energy. There are things that will draw off your energy, ego being one of them. So if you have this feeling, channel that into doing a great job. Use that force. Use the force, Luke.
It's May 4th, by the way. It's May 4th. It's May 4th, so it's May the Force be with you today anyway.
That's right. So I guess I took my dad's advice to heart, and it also leaves you less vulnerable, because I think if you're driven by your ego, it creates sometimes situations that will eventually affect you in a negative manner. It's like, again, my dad taught me that if I'm faced with a problem, my first thought should be, wow, this is cool. Yeah, okay. As opposed to, oh God, what am I going to do?
Waste of energy, yeah.
Waste of time, yeah. Absolutely.
What everyone's asking me, okay, Defense Department, give me a Reader's Digest version because you're short on time. How did that happen?
Wrote a paper on how to convert a Navy carrier battle group and surface battle group an air defense system, how to convert it to do theater missile defense. Theater meaning in the air, not against major ICBMs, but cruise missiles and short range and medium range missiles. Gave it to a congressman buddy that I was working with. helping him with counterterrorism because I was with LAPD at the time. And he gave it to the vice chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the House, who then called him back and said, what is this guy with Raytheon or Lockheed or something? No, he's a guitar player for the Doobie Brothers. So I got a call from Congressman Welding saying, would you accept the position on the Armed Services Committee consulting on missile defense? And I said, okay. And that just led to more and more and more involvement with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, and also offered me an opportunity to serve my country. Yeah. My dad was 5 years active, 20 years reserve U.S. Army. So I grew up in that atmosphere, and I grew up with the understanding that serving your country was something that was honorable, necessary, and something you should be proud of. So I was at the Pentagon at 9/11, and that changed my life. That said, okay, I've been blessed and privileged to grow up in a country that's given me so much freedom that I could become a musician. It's time to pay back. So, and they're heuristic. Like I say, my colleagues, I explain to them, a radar is just an electric guitar on steroids. If you understand the physics of it, you're in. So, again, as the U.S. Marines say, persevere, adapt, improvise. And as the Navy SEALs say, the only easy day was yesterday. So if you have that attitude, things work out.
I want to thank Jeff for spending some time with us. He was on a very tight budget that day. He had sound check coming up right after our interview, and we kept him on time. Speed of Heat is the new album. You can pick it up in the description of this video. Also links in the description of every single individual track that we put on our sister station. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book.